We continue our conversation with all 17 of the candidates on the ballot for Denver mayor with Al Gardner. Al, welcome to Next.
Thank you for having me.
So you're an IT guy. You've served in a lot of volunteer capacities, non-elected public service within the city, a lot of boards and commissions. Why run for mayor as your first attempt at elected office?
You know, I've been asked that question a lot, Kyle. And it's like, well, why don't you just take it in chunks? But to be honest with you, it's like, what would make the biggest impact? And I believe that through me taking the time to kind of learn the city, learn how it works, be active, interface with leaders, I don't think there's another way to impact the city in the way that I believe I could through this office. I think this is the way, and that's why we're going for it.
So if you'll pardon the phrase, you're kind of sneaky qualified in the sense that like you've been involved in a lot of things in the city for a long time.
Yeah.
But my guess is that most of the folks watching this won't know you by name.
Right.
Give them the 30-second of what has prepared you for this big step.
Yeah, you know, over the past, I'll say 10 years, almost going on 12 years, my first foray was on the African American Commission. And I was appointed by Michael Hancock to work on that commission. And that commission, there are a lot of them in the city. And what we're responsible for is really kind of educating the different portions of the city about what's going on, how to get involved, and really being that liaison. The second thing was the Citizens Oversight Board, which was another appointment. And that's where I really got into learning how the city council works, how the mayor's office works, interfacing with department leaders, and that was that part of it. And to now, Civil Service Commission, which keeps the engine really of the safety department moving in terms of hiring and firing. I shouldn't say firing, but hiring and discipline and the other. But that's me, and I've managed to do that balance in my professional life. I've managed to do that while still staying very active in the IT field, and so I feel that that's the best way to serve.
Let's start with issues around public safety. So you told Denverite that Denver is going in the right direction from a public safety standpoint. You know, we had 55 murders last year. I mean, that was the most in 3 decades. Why do you think we're going in the right direction?
Yeah, and I say that because I think we're going in the right direction in terms of how we're thinking about change. I've been privy to work with the past 3 police chiefs now. And I can tell you, through each of them, I've seen the iteration and the movement toward a thought process that is more open, that is more ready to receive feedback, and really understanding that we need to do better. So when I say that, I mean from a mindset perspective, I think we're at a point where we want to understand it more. And I think this is a really pivotal point where the right leader can come in and shepherd that mindset to actual things that fill themselves out on the street.
What do you think about the idea of keeping Ron Thomas as chief?
You know, I like Chief Thomas. I think he's been around a lot. At the same time, I don't intend on saying it's day one, you're gone. At the same time, I intend to put some very hard performance indicators around what the chief of police does. I think one thing that we've fallen victim to in this city as well is that sometimes the mayor seems to be driving where the police department needs to go. And these chiefs really do have a lot of good impact, but we really need them to step in, and I need to see that. Not only me as the leader, but the people also need to understand where those priorities are, and I think we've dropped the ball there sometimes.
Where specifically do you want to see change in DPD?
Culture, and that's a difficult one. I can remember actually sitting and testifying when Representative Harrod was actually working on Senate Bill 217. I sat with one of the folks who were asking the questions, and they said, Mr. Gardner, we've been investing in getting more blacks in the police department for the past 50 years. We haven't seen any change, any difficulty. Why is that? And my response to him was, well, it's not just getting more color inside the police office, inside the police department. It's also the culture, and that's the hardest thing to change. How do you effectively change that? I think you're going to have a leader who's willing to turn the screws on a lot of these different parts and positions that operate within the police department.
What's wrong with the culture now?
You know, I've done a lot of ride-alongs. Probably more than most, I'm going to say that I'm running against. I was on a ride-along one time, and the officer I was riding with, there was a gentleman with that had been reported with a gun over the Montbello neighborhood. He was able to stop him. He hopped out of his car, gun drawn, almost in one motion, which I think was appropriate because the report was of a gun. Stopped the young man, had him down on the street, holstered his weapon. 5 to 10 seconds later, here come about 7 or 8 more police officers, guns drawn, cursing, pointing, and the officer I was with had to call him off, say, hey, it's good. To me, there was no reason for that because the suspect was already under control. That, to me, is a training issue. That's an issue of who we're bringing in, and that's part of that culture I think that we really need to stand up and speak about.
Talking about who we're bringing in, you served on the Civil Service Commission. Why can't the city find enough people who are willing to be cops and sheriff's deputies?
Yeah, you know, here's the thing. I have a Civil Service Commission meeting tomorrow, and it's to go through police applications and fire applications. We have a nice amount that come through, quite honestly. But we're actually doing the job that we're supposed to do, which is look at these applications and scrutinize, really put a picture together of a whole person to say, is this person really qualified and ready to be able to address the city? That's the one part of it, the kind of applicant that we're getting. The second thing is where we're recruiting from. And we have to broaden that out to take a look at where can we get more recruits. And those two things together, to me, are how we create a better pipeline toward getting applicants.
I want to ask you about both those things. Where should we be fishing that we're not fishing enough now for people?
You know, I don't think, I've worked in the past with DPD recruiting, working with various HBCUs to try and increase that number. I think we need to be putting more effort there. I think we need to be putting more effort into how we advertise where we need the help. There's one police chief that I asked in a Citizens Oversight Board meeting. He was talking about how we're losing officers to different small cities. And I said, hey, Chief, okay, let me ask you this. We're losing them. They're leaving. They don't want to be officers. What are you doing to increase it? He said, well, there's signs on the back of the cars. That's not a solution. And so for me, we can't look at it that way. It's almost like we've thrown up our hands, said it's a difficult job, and we keep harping on the fact that no one wants to be it, and that's not true. I believe policing is going through a change that is probably 100 years behind the time. And so now we're seeing a correction.
Do we need to change our standards? Lower them specifically?
Lower, no. I think that in some instances, we really need to look really closely at potentially raising the educational standards. I'm not against having an AA or associate's degree in some type of criminal behavior or some type of criminal justice degree. I think we need to look strongly at that. And on the other side of that, I really think we need to look at the age limit. We're at 21 now to be able to take someone in. That's a lot of responsibility and power for a 21-year-old. And I think we need to look seriously at raising that age limit.
One last question on policing. Would you be interested in increasing the authorized force beyond 1,600 officers, which we're currently not hired up to, but would you like to see more cops on the street than that?
I would.
Yeah?
I would. I think and I think it would be right-sizing. I think we've been 1,600 is counted as full force. We're not at that yet, but the city has grown, but that number hasn't really moved, and I think that we have to if we want to stay the course of getting better.
I want to ask you about the issue of homelessness. Would you continue the homeless sweeps currently being done by the Hancock administration?
That's an emphatic no.
Why?
And I say no because it creates a circular system. If you just jail people, put them back on the street, move them around, jail them, going back to public safety, the Denver Sheriff's Department is already understaffed. They already have challenges. I've spoken to the deputies. I've done multiple jail tours. I know what the issues are. And to say we're going to take someone and criminalize that, I think that puts strain on many other different parts of the whole city apparatus as a whole. The second thing to that, we have to really think about the fact that if someone doesn't have a criminal record, they're arrested for being homeless, you add to the problem, you're not actually fixing it. And we're playing a shell game with folks, and we're not really coming up with a solution.
So I just want to make sure that we're real clear on this. I think your answer was clear. So you would not arrest folks just for violating the urban camping ban?
I would not.
So then how do we clear the encampments?
That's the $1 million question.
$250 million.
That's the $250 million. And I'm going to give an honest, non-political answer. I don't know. But this is what I do know. I do know that there are other solutions for us to be able to do it. Now, in saying I don't know, I don't have the ultimate solution. At the same time, I know that things are available in our toolbox to be able to handle folks who are having this type of chronic homelessness. I look at homelessness in 3 different buckets, and there's not a one-size-fits-all approach. So we have the acute homelessness with short time, we have transitional, and we have chronic. There's a point-in-time survey that came out today. I just spoke with one of the leaders of one of the homeless shelters, and we really look at chronic homelessness. They're at about 25% of really the full homeless picture. I tend to look at that as a huge opportunity. And I know everybody's, we have to do, we do, but really, if we look at the number of chronic homelessness, that's a huge opportunity for the other 75%, and to be able to focus on 25 as well.
That's something I've heard from a few other people in the race, that everybody's focused on how do you fix it, how do you cure it, how do you take care of 100% when chip away, and all of a sudden what appears to be an overwhelming problem becomes a smaller problem,
right?
More manageable.
Absolutely. And if you spend time with homeless people, which I have, I was also IT director at the Denver Rescue Mission. And like I've always said throughout my career, I've done my profession at the same time. I've always lended my hand in other things. I've had multiple conversations during my time there. I have not talked to one man, I never spoke with one man in that program that wanted to be on the street. So that says to me that there is a huge opportunity to move this needle. I think the city needs to be partially in the homeless business, but not to the extent that we are. And I think we really need to lean on our partners who have the expertise and funnel some more of that $250 million toward them.
Lastly, let's wrap up with the issue of affordable housing. Where should Denver be adding it? In what form? How do you get that done?
Yeah. Where should we add it? There are multiple spaces throughout the city. I would like to see it added in a lot of the corridors that already have a lot of access to public transportation, because that kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone, making it easier for folks to be able to be housed and transportation to work and what have you. How do we get there? I think we also need to not let the city continue to be for sale to the highest bidder. And I think we really have to determine what type of Denver do we want to be. Do we just want to continue to grow vertical and just become the most populous place? Or do we want to be a spot where people can come and really have a good life experience here? And that's what we have to decide as a city, which is one of the reasons I haven't been very involved or eager to accept outside money or outside forces, because I think the most important thing right now is a leader who really, really focuses on the city. I'm less concerned about whether or not we can become San Francisco or Seattle or LA. How do we become the best Denver? And I think that's what's been lost.
So that's a resistance to adding affordable housing that you don't hear from most of the 17 candidates in the race. I mean, are you saying Denver's full? I mean, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I'm saying that we need to have responsible growth. And growing for growth's sake is something that I don't think is a good way to approach it. Just saying, how do we capitalize more? How do we bring more? I think we need to focus on responsible growth and making it affordable. And then I think once we've hit that, then we're able to say, okay, we need to expand in this direction. Most folks that work in the city don't live in the city. And that's something that's not going to stop. That's going to continue, which means we have to make those partnerships with the other cities around us, as well as RTD, a lot richer, and we need to focus on quality of life here as well.
But would you like to see some more affordable housing added within the city limits so that firefighters and police officers and teachers who work in the city could also live here? Or do you think it's a foregone conclusion they're going to be in the suburbs?
No, absolutely. I think we do need to focus on that. And I think there are a lot of opportunities. I know folks, there are some people in this race that have put all of their eggs in the basket. If we don't do Prop 20, then we're going to miss this huge opportunity. That's just not facts. And there are plenty of opportunities for us to grow. And I'm all for finding spaces If we look at Rhino and we see the proliferation of buildings over there, the truth of the matter is there are not a whole lot of folks who are firemen or firewomen and police officers that can afford to live over there a lot of times. So really taking a look at AMI, building those units, and not just 10 or 15, but something realistic, I think, is definitely in my plan.
And the proposition you mentioned, of course, is the development of the Park Hill Golf Course.
Correct.
What is your thought on that? Are you a yes or a no on the ballot proposition?
I'm a no.
You're a no. And why are you a no?
I'm a no because after reading a lot in different articles and really going through the agreement, I think it comes close, but I don't think it goes far enough. And going back to the conversation of what type of Denver do we want to have, we have to look 5 or 10 years down the road. And I think what will be in demand is more green space. As we talk about density, as we talk about affordable housing units, we have to look at the city that we're going to leave our children, and I think that's important. I believe that we can build and still have that green space, and I believe we got a bad deal. I believe we rushed into it, and I think that the people of Denver need to have a greater say.
So you're not opposed to the development of the property, but
No.
you want more out of the developer.
Absolutely.
Including more of the property left as green space.
Absolutely. If we take a look at this again in 5 years, and I feel that it makes more sense and it's more equitable, I would be all for it. But in its present state, no.
Al Gardner, we will leave it there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.